Good afternoon, everyone. I will start with a personal anecdote as well, in keeping with the previous speakers. September 17th, 1996, I sat towards the back of the social science lecture theatre. Professor Monroe was lecturing, and after class I asked him about a first class honors, and he said no one had gotten a first class honors in political science in about 5 years, and I told him that I would get one. The rest is history. So thank you, Professor Monroe, for charting my academic course. What I want to talk about is the focus on youths. What does governance mean in light of government? Because I think sometimes we often conflate government with governance. And Professor Monroe has been keen on this distinction ever since I did the democracy course in 1999. And I've begun to think about it even more importantly, that governance deals with the effective management of institutions. Government focuses on the structure of those institutions, but governance deals with the management of these institutions. Our institutions in the Caribbean cannot be managed unless the youths are not only asked or consulted in terms of decision-making process, they must be there to make decisions. And I think what has been fundamentally lacking is the question not just of youth participation, but youths as decision makers. I want to focus on the reality that most of our succession planning politically in the Caribbean has been either as a result of natural causes, i.e. death, or unpopularity. Most of our political leaders from the generation of which Prof. Monroe may be, depending on how he identifies himself, often requires defeat in order to exit the political stage. And I looked at the Commonwealth statistics, and I know that 60% of the Commonwealth is 30 and under. Now that's significant in light of the critical importance of youths in our political landscape. I did a quick survey of our political leaders, and the average age of our elected political leaders across the Commonwealth Caribbean, but the wider Caribbean, is 57 years old. Certainly that is significantly better than it was 20 years ago, where it was 60 years old. So we are trending down, but what is even more apparent is that youths only make up, and here I'm talking millennials as they call them now, between 15 and 29, they only make up less than 20% of elected officials across the Caribbean. So we can't talk about sustainability without talking about sustainable political development. Development isn't just human, it is also political. And for that I go to Amartya Sen, who, as you should know, was one of the progenitors of the Human Development Report, and he simply defines development as when people live the life they have reason to value. And what is fundamental about it is, how do we assess value? We can't talk about the currency of value without talking about youths. And I think as we have engagement and questions, I want to talk some more about that. I want to talk about the transition of the type of political leadership we've had in the Caribbean. In the early Caribbean, it was the hero political leadership, evinced by Professor Archie Singham's work, The Hero and the Crowd. But we moved to the technocratic leadership, but most fundamentally, and I would argue most consequentially, to the messianic political leadership. And that ship has sailed. We now require more pragmatic and balanced leadership, and that requires the innovation and dynamism of youths. Political leadership has to be less divisive, and I think our youths therefore play a significant role in this regard. They do not have the same kind of entrenchment as the previous generations that focus on the ideological polarization of our then world. They didn't walk with Williams or Compton or Bishop or Bustamante or Manley or Adams. They belong to this current generation of change. And when I looked at the question of youths and sustainability, we have to look at gender. I did a quick survey of the room, and it is 60-40 in terms of males versus females. If our parliaments and our elected officials across the Caribbean could get to this, we'd have a significant qualitative adjustment in the type of leadership we have in the Caribbean. There have been only 11 elected female heads of government or state post-independent. The first, Dame Eugenia Charles in 1979-1980, but we've only had 10 since then. So there is a significant way to go, and I would argue that sustainability has to focus on political succession planning. How do we plan in our respective Caribbean countries and as a region to not just include them in the decision-making process, that is youths, but to ensure that they are part of the decision-making. Thank you very much.